The Ventaxian aliens laughed at Earth's beasts for being fangless pets, but ancient human warbeasts were about to roar to life and tear them to shreds. Tyler Powell was getting tired of the Ventaxian diplomats' constant dissing of Earth's wildlife. Laros had laughed for the 5th time this morning as Tyler fed the grey wolf pack at the San Diego Zoo. "I can't believe your fiercest predators are basically just pets," Laros scoffed, his reptilian scales vibrating with each chuckle. "Back on Ventax Prime, our Krakar would rip these scrawny canids apart in seconds." Tyler clenched his jaw, trying to keep his cool. As an ex-Marine, he knew how to deal with arrogant pricks, but there was something about Laros and his entourage's smugness that made Tyler's blood boil. Earth had welcomed the 7-foot lizards 2 months ago, hoping to establish trade relations. But so far all they'd done was strut around criticizing everything. "You know, Laros, maybe we should put your money where your mouth is," Tyler said, turning to face the towering alien. "How about a little friendly competition? Your Krakar against one of our pets. See who comes out on top." Laros's slitted eyes widened, his forked tongue flicking out in surprise. Then he threw his head back and laughed, the sound grating on Tyler's ears. "Then you have nothing to lose, right?" Tyler challenged, crossing his arms. Laros considered for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, human. I accept your challenge, but be prepared to scrape your pet's remains off the arena floor." As the Ventaxians strutted away, Tyler allowed himself a small smile. They had no idea what they were in for. See, Tyler had been planning this for weeks, ever since he'd overheard 2 Ventaxian guards joking about conquering Earth and enslaving its weak, primitive inhabitants. He knew he had to show them humanity's strength, and he knew just how to do it. Hidden away on a secret preserve, Tyler had been training a very special pack of creatures, beasts that hadn't roamed the Earth in millennia: dire wolves, saber-toothed cats, gigantic short-faced bears, megafauna from the Pleistocene era, resurrected using cutting-edge cloning tech. The stage was set. The Ventaxians had laughed at humanity's pets for the last time. Soon they would face creatures that had inspired primal fear in humans for thousands of years. And for the first time in history, all of humanity would be rooting for the beasts. Tyler threw himself into researching Earth's most lethal predators. He visited zoos and wildlife sanctuaries, studying lions, tigers, and bears. He even tracked down a monstrous saltwater crocodile in Australia, a behemoth the locals had dubbed Brutus. But as impressive as these creatures were, Tyler knew they wouldn't be enough to truly humble the Ventaxians. He needed something bigger, something primordial, something that would make even the Krakar seem like mere lizards. He reached out to his old friend, Dr. Ethan Reed, a 45-year-old paleontologist who specialized in the study of ancient predators. They met at Ethan's lab, surrounded by fossilized remains of long-extinct beasts. "If you really want to show these aliens the power of Earth's pets, you need to go back in time," Ethan said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "And I don't mean metaphorically." Tyler frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "Cloning," Ethan replied. "We have the technology to extract DNA from preserved remains and bring these creatures back to life. Imagine the look on that smug bastard's face when he sees a megalodon in the flesh." Tyler's heart raced at the thought. The megalodon, a prehistoric shark that made great whites look like guppies. 40 feet long, 20,000 pounds of raw power and teeth. It was the stuff of nightmares. But it was also the key to putting the Ventaxians in their place. As Ethan and his team worked to extract viable DNA from a remarkably well-preserved megalodon skeleton, Laros returned to Ventax Prime to select his champion. He stalked through the Krakar breeding pens, examining each snarling, snapping beast with a critical eye. Finally, he came to a massive 6-legged reptilian monstrosity known as a Zorgoth. 30 feet long, with scales like tank armor and claws that could shred steel, the Zorgoth was the apex predator of Ventax Prime. Its venomous bite could drop a full-grown Krakar in seconds. "He'll do nicely," Laros purred, running a clawed hand along the beast's flank. As the Zorgoth was loaded into a transport ship bound for Earth, Laros began to have second thoughts about the whole affair. What if the Krakar lost? The diplomatic fallout could set their trade negotiations back years. But it was too late to back out now. The challenge had been made, and Ventaxian honor demanded that it be seen through. Back on Earth, Ethan burst into Tyler's office, his face flushed with excitement. "We did it! The Megalodon is viable!" Tyler rushed to the marine enclosure where the cloned shark was being kept. He watched in awe as the massive creature, which they had named Titan, swam lazy circles in the reinforced tank. Over the next few weeks, as Titan grew at an astounding rate, Tyler spent every spare moment observing and bonding with the ancient predator. He marveled at the shark's raw power and grace, the way it moved through the water like a force of nature. But as the day of the battle drew near, a new threat emerged. A rival Ventaxian faction opposed to the trade negotiations had gotten wind of the competition. They declared it a disgrace to Ventaxian tradition, an insult to their honor. And they vowed to do whatever it took to stop it. Tyler was studying the arena fortifications when a commotion outside made his head snap up. His eyes narrowed as he saw a familiar figure push past the security guards and stride towards him, his estranged brother Jake. Jake looked leaner and harder than the last time Tyler had seen him, dressed in black tactical gear with a grim expression. The brothers eyed each other warily, old wounds and resentments hanging heavy in the air. "The UN sent me," Jake replied. "They want to make sure this little event of yours doesn't turn into an interplanetary incident." Tyler scoffed. "I have it under control." "Do you?" Jake challenged. "Because I heard there's a rival Ventaxian faction that would love nothing more than to see this whole thing go up in flames, literally." Tyler felt a flicker of unease but pushed it down. "We're prepared for that." Jake shook his head. "You have no idea what you're up against, little brother. These aliens aren't here to make friends, they're here to conquer." "What are you talking about?" Tyler demanded. "I have it on good authority that these trade negotiations are just a smokescreen," Jake said. "The Ventaxians are here to assess Earth's defenses, to see if we're ripe for the taking." Tyler's blood ran cold. If what Jake was saying was true, then the stakes of this competition had just gotten a whole lot higher. Meanwhile, on the Ventaxian mothership orbiting Earth, Laro stood before his superiors, his head bowed. "You will win this battle, Laros," the High Commander hissed. "No matter the cost, the future of our conquest depends on it." Laro swallowed hard, torn between his duty and the growing respect he felt for the humans. "I understand, High Commander." "Do not fail us," the commander warned, "or the consequences will be dire." Back at the arena, Tyler and Jake worked to bolster their defenses. They recruited Maria Romero, a deadly marine sniper, and Liam O'Connor, a grizzled Navy SEAL, to join their security team. Together, they set up a network of cameras and sensors around the perimeter, patrolling the grounds in shifts. Titan continued to train, growing more massive and powerful by the day. But even as they prepared, a sense of unease hung over the arena. Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something sinister lurked in the shadows. He had no idea how right he was. Deep in the bowels of the arena, a group of Ventaxian saboteurs disguised as maintenance workers planted explosives and sabotaged key systems. They moved with ruthless efficiency, their faces grim with determination. They had their orders, to ensure the Krakar's victory, no matter the cost. As the day of the competition loomed ever closer, the tension mounted to a breaking point. Tyler and Jake, once estranged, found themselves working side by side to protect Earth's champion. But with enemies lurking around every corner and the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance, they knew that the real battle was only just beginning. A deafening explosion tore through the arena, shaking the ground and sending shrapnel flying. Screams of terror filled the air as people ran for cover. Tyler and Jake sprinted towards the source of the blast, their hearts pounding. As they rounded a corner, they skidded to a halt, their eyes widening in horror. The Zorgoth containment unit lay in ruins, twisted metal and sparking wires scattered across the floor. And in the middle of the wreckage, the massive reptilian beast stood, its scales gleaming under the flickering emergency lights. The Zorgoth let out a bone-chilling roar, its eyes blazing with rage. It lashed out with its claws, tearing through metal and concrete like paper. Workers scrambled to get out of its way, but some were too slow. The creature's tail whipped around, sending bodies flying. Laros burst into the room, his face contorted with shock and anger. He took in the scene, his eyes darting from the rampaging Zorgoth to the injured workers. "This has gone too far," he growled, clenching his fists. "We have to stop this before more people get hurt." Tyler and Jake nodded grimly, their jaws set. They knew they had to act fast. "What's the plan?" Tyler asked, his eyes never leaving the Zorgoth. Laros hesitated for a moment, then squared his shoulders. "We need to contain it. The Zorgoth has a weakness, a spot just behind its head. If we can hit it there with enough force, it should stun the creature long enough for us to get it back into a secure holding area." Jake hefted his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. "I can take the shot." But Laros shook his head. "No, the scales are too thick. We need something stronger." Tyler's eyes widened as an idea hit him. "Titan. We can use Titan." Laros and Jake both turned to stare at him, their expressions a mix of disbelief and hope. Tyler nodded, his jaw clenched. "It's our only chance." As they raced towards Titan's enclosure, Maria's voice crackled over the radio. "Perimeter breach. We've got Ventaxian saboteurs incoming." Gunfire erupted in the background, followed by shouts and screams. Tyler's heart clenched, but he forced himself to focus on the task at hand. They reached Titan's enclosure, the massive megalodon swimming lazy circles in the reinforced tank. Tyler hit the release button, his hand shaking slightly. "I hope you know what you're doing," Laros muttered as the tank began to drain. Tyler didn't respond. His eyes locked on Titan as the shark emerged from the water, its massive jaws gaping. The Zorgoth's roar echoed through the arena, a challenge and a threat. Titan answered with a roar of its own, the sound vibrating through the floor. The two titans collided in a clash of teeth and claws, their massive bodies slamming into each other with bone-crushing force. The Zorgoth's venomous bite tore at Titan's thick hide, but the megalodon's raw strength and size proved too much. They rolled and thrashed, destroying everything in their path. The arena shook with the force of their battle, the live feed broadcasting every moment to the stunned audiences on Earth and Ventax Prime. Amidst the chaos, Tyler and Laros worked frantically to contain the damage, shouting orders and directing the evacuation efforts. For a moment, their differences were forgotten, two warriors united against a common foe. But their fragile alliance was shattered by the sudden appearance of a Ventaxian warship, its weapons trained on the arena. A booming voice echoed over the loudspeakers, cold and ruthless. "Laros, this is Captain Zarkon. You are ordered to surrender the Zorgoth and return to Ventax Prime immediately. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of the arena and all those within it." Laros froze, his eyes wide with horror. He turned to Tyler, his expression torn. But before either of them could speak, the warship opened fire, a barrage of laser blasts raining down on the arena. The ground shook, the air filled with smoke and debris. And in the middle of it all, Titan and the Zorgoth continued to battle, oblivious to the destruction around them, two ancient predators locked in a timeless struggle for dominance. As the warship's laser blasts rained down, the arena shook with each impact. Concrete and metal shattered, raining debris onto the battling titans below. Titan lunged for the Zorgoth's exposed throat, its massive jaws opened wide. The Zorgoth, already weakened from the relentless assault, stumbled back, its legs giving out beneath it. Just as Titan's teeth were about to clamp down on the Zorgoth's neck, a searing beam of energy slammed into the ground beside them. The explosion ripped through the arena, engulfing both beasts in a blinding flash of light and heat. The shockwave sent Tyler and Laros flying, their bodies flung like ragdolls. Tyler hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. His vision swam as he struggled to his feet, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead. He scanned the arena, desperately searching for any sign of Laros amidst the chaos. But the Ventaxian was nowhere to be seen. Grief and rage warred within him as he stumbled through the rubble. Laros was gone, and with him any hope for peace between their worlds. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Tyler's resolve hardened into something sharp and deadly. He would make Zarkon pay for what he'd done. Ignoring the pain that lanced through his body with every step, Tyler limped towards the edge of the arena, where Jake and Maria were waiting. Their faces were grim as they took in his battered appearance. "Laros?" Jake asked, already knowing the answer. Tyler shook his head. "We have to get onto that warship. It's the only way to stop this." Maria nodded, her sniper rifle at the ready. "Let's go." They made their way out of the arena, dodging rubble and enemy fire as they went. The warship loomed above them, its weapons still targeting the ruined structure. As they approached its looming hull, Tyler's mind raced with plans and possibilities. Infiltrating a Ventaxian warship was no easy feat, but he'd be damned if he let that stop him. Zarkon had to be brought to justice, not just for Laros's death, but for the lives of everyone he'd put at risk with his reckless warmongering. With Jake and Maria at his side, Tyler began to scale the ship's exterior, his hands finding purchase in the alien metal. Each pull sent fresh waves of agony through his battered body, but he welcomed the pain. It fueled his determination, his need for vengeance. They reached an access hatch, and Jake made quick work of the lock with a few well-placed shots from his pistol. As they slipped inside, the ship's alarms began to blare, red lights flashing in warning. But Tyler barely noticed. His mind was focused on one thing and one thing only, finding Zarkon and ending this once and for all. Meanwhile, back in the ruined arena, Laros coughed as he pushed himself up from under a slab of concrete. His head throbbed, and he could feel blood oozing from a wound on his leg. He looked around, trying to get his bearings. The last thing he remembered was the warship firing on the arena, and then nothing. "Tyler!" he called out, his voice hoarse. No response. Fear gripped his heart as he realized that the human was likely dead, buried beneath the rubble. A groan from nearby caught his attention, and he turned to see Liam pinned under a twisted beam of metal. The SEAL's face was pale, his breathing labored. Laros limped over, ignoring the pain that shot up his injured leg with each step. He gripped the beam, his muscles straining as he lifted it just enough for Liam to crawl free. "Thanks," Liam gasped, clutching his ribs. Before Laros could respond, a deafening roar split the air. They turned to see Titan and the Zorgoth, both battered but very much alive, facing off against the warship. The two beasts moved in unison, their differences forgotten in the face of a shared enemy. Titan charged forward, its massive bulk shielding the Zorgoth from the warship's laser fire. The Zorgoth darted out from behind its newfound ally, its claws raking against the ship's hull, tearing great gashes in the metal. Laros watched in awe as the two Titans worked together, a living embodiment of the alliance he'd hoped to forge between their worlds. If they could put aside their differences and fight side by side, then perhaps there was still hope for Earth and Ventax Prime. He turned to Liam, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. "We have to help them." Liam nodded, grabbing a discarded rifle from the rubble. "Let's show these bastards what happens when you mess with Earth." Together they limped towards the battling giants, ready to join the fray. On the bridge of the warship, Zarkon snarled as he watched the Zorgoth and Titan tearing into his ship. "Concentrate all fire on those beasts," he ordered, his clawed hands gripping the console. Just then the bridge doors exploded inward, and Tyler burst through, his eyes blazing with fury. Zarkon spun to face him, a cruel smile twisting his reptilian features. Tyler didn't bother with the response. He launched himself at the Ventaxian, his fists flying. Zarkon met him head-on, his own claws slashing. They traded blows, each one fueled by hatred and desperation. As they fought, Jake and Maria moved quickly to disable the ship's weapons. Jake's fingers flew over the console, his brow furrowed in concentration. Maria kept watch, her rifle trained on the door. "Hurry," she urged, her voice tight. "We don't have much time." With a final triumphant keystroke, Jake looked up, a grim smile on his face. "It's done. This ship isn't firing on anyone else." On the bridge, Tyler and Zarkon's battle had reached a fever pitch. They grappled with each other, their bodies slamming into consoles and bulkheads. Zarkon's claws found purchase in Tyler's flesh, drawing blood, but Tyler barely felt the pain. He grabbed the Ventaxian by the throat, slamming him against the viewport. Zarkon's eyes bulged as Tyler's grip tightened, choking off his air. Before he could deliver the final blow, the ship shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared as the smell of smoke filled the air. Tyler looked up to see Titan and the Zorgoth, their massive forms looming outside the viewport. They had breached the hull. Hand riding on their backs, clinging to the jagged edges of torn metal, were Laros and Liam. Tyler's heart leapt at the sight of the Ventaxian alive, a fierce grin splitting his face. As the ship began to break apart around them, consumed by the damage inflicted by the Titans and the sabotage from within, Tyler knew that this was far from over. But for now, they had won. Earth and Ventax Prime, humans and aliens, ancient beasts and unlikely allies. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The war may have begun, but united they would see it through to the end. As the warship shuddered under the onslaught of Titan and the Zorgoth, Zarkon's eyes blazed with manic fury. He slammed his fist onto a control panel, activating a hidden compartment. A sinister device rose from within, pulsing with an eerie red glow. With a vicious twist of a dial, Zarkon sent a surge of energy from the device towards the battling Titans outside. The Zorgoth suddenly stiffened, its eyes glazing over. It turned slowly, mechanically, to face Titan. Laros, watching in horror from the ruined arena below, realized what had happened. No, he's taken control of the Zorgoth. Tyler, locked in combat with Zarkon, could only watch helplessly as the Zorgoth lunged at Titan with renewed savagery. The megalodon roared in pain and confusion as its erstwhile ally's claws raked across its hide. Laros looked frantically around, his mind racing. His eyes fell on a grappling gun half buried in rubble. He snatched it up and sprinted towards the Titans, ignoring Liam's shouts of warning. Back on the warship's bridge, Tyler ducked under a vicious swipe from Zarkon's claws. He swept the Ventaxian's legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the deck. But Zarkon was up again in an instant, his eyes burning with hatred. Tyler's response was a bone-crushing punch to Zarkon's jaw. The Ventaxian reeled back, spitting blood. Outside, Laros fired the grappling gun, the cable wrapping around one of the Zorgoth's legs. He hauled himself up, hand over hand, towards the mind control device glinting on the creature's neck. The Zorgoth thrashed and bucked, trying to dislodge him. Laros clung on grimly, his muscles screaming with effort. Titan, understanding what the Ventaxian was trying to do, rammed into the Zorgoth, holding it in place for a precious few seconds. Laros's fingers closed around the mind control device. He wrenched at it with all his strength, feeling it start to give. On the bridge, Tyler and Zarkon's fight had reached a fever pitch. They crashed through consoles, sparks flying, alarms blaring. Tyler had Zarkon pinned, his hands around the Ventaxian's throat. But he hesitated, his eyes drawn to a view screen showing Laros struggling with the mind control device. Zarkon, sensing his distraction, surged upward, throwing Tyler off. Tyler rolled to his feet, faced with a terrible choice. Finish Zarkon now or go to Laros's aid. He looked at Zarkon, hate etched in every line of the alien's face. There would be no mercy there, no chance for peace. This ends now, Zarkon, he growled. With a final, mighty effort, he launched himself at the Ventaxian. His fist slammed into Zarkon's face once, twice, 3 times. Zarkon crumpled, his skull shattered, his life extinguished in a spray of blood. At the same instant, Laros ripped the mind control device free. The Zorgoth shuddered, blinked, awareness returning to its eyes. It turned to the Ventaxian warship, bellowing its rage. Titan joined its roar. The two giants united once more. They slammed into the ship, tearing through metal like paper. Explosions bloomed across the hull as the vessel began to break apart. Jake and Maria burst onto the bridge, taking in the scene of carnage. "We have to go now," Jake yelled. Tyler nodded, sparing one last glance at Zarkon's body. Then they were running, racing through collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris. They leaped from the disintegrating ship, landing hard on the arena floor. Laros was there, battered but alive. Titan and the Zorgoth stood over them, their hides scored with wounds, their eyes alight with a new understanding. For a moment there was silence, broken only by the crackle of flames and the distant wail of sirens. Tyler and Laros looked at each other, a wealth of emotions passing between them. Then a comms unit on Tyler's belt crackled to life, a panicked voice filling the air. "Under attack. Repeat, Earth is under attack. Ventaxian forces have entered the atmosphere. All units respond." Tyler's blood ran cold. He met Laros' eyes, saw the same fear and determination there. Laros nodded grimly. "Together," he said. They turned to face the horizon, where the first Ventaxian ships were already descending through the clouds. The battle for Earth had begun. Tyler's hands flew over the warship's controls, plotting a course for Earth. The stars blurred past the viewport as the engines surged with power, propelling them toward their destiny. Laros stood at his side, his eyes fixed on the readouts. "We'll make it," he said, his voice tight. "We have to." Suddenly an alarm blared through the bridge. Tyler's eyes snapped to the console, his heart sinking as he read the message scrolling across the screen. Laros hissed, his claws flexing. "Ventaxian strike force. They're trying to cripple Earth's defenses." Tyler hesitated for a split second, torn between his duty to Earth and his instinct to help those in need. But there was no choice, not really. He couldn't abandon the colonists to their fate. "We're going in," he said, altering their course. As they approached the moon of Titan, the scale of the attack became clear. Ventaxian ships swarmed the colony, raining down fire on the domed structures. Explosions bloomed across the surface, casting eerie shadows in the dim light. Tyler brought the warship in low, skimming the rocky terrain. He could see figures running between the buildings, desperate to escape the onslaught. "Jake, Maria, Liam, get to the transporter," he ordered over the comm. "We need boots on the ground now." As his team scrambled to obey, Tyler turned to Laros. "The Zorgoth and Titan?" Laros nodded, his eyes gleaming. "They're ready." Tyler hit the release, and the two massive creatures leaped from the warship's hold, landing on the moon's surface with earth-shaking impact. They charged towards the Ventaxian forces, roaring their challenge. The strike force turned to face this new threat, their weapons spitting plasma. But the Zorgoth and Titan shrugged off the blasts, their hides too thick to penetrate. They crashed into the Ventaxian lines, claws and teeth rending flesh and metal alike. Tyler and his team beamed down into the heart of the colony, weapons drawn. They moved from building to building, herding terrified colonists towards the warship's transport coordinates. "Go, go, go!" Tyler shouted, laying down covering fire as a group of children ran past. Suddenly a Ventaxian warrior loomed out of the smoke, his blaster leveled at the fleeing civilians. Liam lunged forward, tackling the alien to the ground. They grappled, rolling across the rubble-strewn ground. A plasma bolt seared past Liam's head, close enough to scorch his hair. He grunted in pain as the Ventaxian's claws raked his side, drawing blood, but he didn't let go, wrestling the blaster from the alien's grip. The weapon discharged, the bolt catching the Ventaxian square in the chest. The warrior convulsed and lay still, smoke rising from the hole in his armor. Liam staggered to his feet, pressing a hand to his wound. But there was no time to rest. More Ventaxians were closing in, their weapons spitting fire. Maria ran to Liam's side, dragging him into cover behind a shattered wall. Plasma bolts stitched the ground around them, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. "We're pinned down," Maria shouted into her comm, her voice barely audible over the din of battle. Suddenly, a massive shadow fell over them. Maria looked up to see the Zorgoth looming above, its scales glistening with Ventaxian blood. The creature planted itself between them and the advancing enemies, its body shielding them from the onslaught. Plasma bolts ricocheted off the Zorgoth's armored hide as it stood its ground, snarling defiance. Maria and Liam scrambled to their feet, taking advantage of the momentary reprieve to race towards safety. As they reached the warship's transport coordinates, they turned back to see the Zorgoth still holding the line, Titan at its side. The two creatures fought as one, a seamless unit of primal fury and unbreakable will. Tyler and Laros pushed towards the center of the colony, where the Ventaxian strike force leader had set up his command post. They burst into the central dome, weapons at the ready. Kazrak stood before them, his armor gleaming in the dim light. He was a towering figure, even by Ventaxian standards, his scales scarred from countless battles. "Surrender, Kazrak," Tyler called out, his blaster trained on the warrior's chest. "It's over." Kazrak laughed, the sound harsh and grating. "Over? This is only the beginning, human. Your world will burn, and your people will kneel before the might of Ventax Prime." He lunged forward, a wicked-looking blade sliding from his gauntlet. Tyler fired, but Kazrak was too fast, twisting aside and closing the distance in a heartbeat. Laros leaped to his defense, his own blade clashing against Kazrak's. The two Ventaxians fought with blinding speed, their movements a blur of slashing metal and spraying sparks. Tyler pushed himself to his feet, gritting his teeth against the pain. He watched as Laros and Kazrak dueled, looking for an opening. There! As Kazrak lunged forward, overextending himself, Tyler charged. He slammed into the Ventaxian from the side, knocking him off balance. Laros pressed the advantage, his blade finding a gap in Kazrak's armor. The strike force leader howled in pain as the sword sank deep into his flesh. Tyler and Laros stood over the fallen warrior, their chests heaving. Kazrak glared up at them, hatred burning in his eyes. "Finish it!" he spat. Kazrak's laughter was cut short as Laros pressed his blade to the warrior's throat. "Do as he says," the Ventaxian growled, "or I will end you here and now." Slowly, grudgingly, Kazrak reached for his comm. "All units, stand down," he said, his voice tight with rage. "The battle is lost." Tyler and Laros stood amid the ruins, watching as their team rounded up the surviving Ventaxians. The Zorgoth and Titan limped towards them, their hides scored with plasma burns, but their eyes bright with victory. Laros nodded, his gaze distant. "For now, but the war is far from over." As the warship lifted off from the moon's surface, carrying the colonists and their Ventaxian prisoners, Tyler knew that Laros was right. Earth still hung in the balance, and the fate of two worlds rested on their shoulders. But for now they had won a crucial victory, and with Titan and the Zorgoth at their side, Tyler knew that anything was possible. The stars beckoned, and the warship surged forward, racing towards the final battle that would decide the future of the galaxy. The stars stretched into infinite lines as Tyler pushed the Ventaxian warship to its limits. Earth grew from a distant speck to a blue-green marble, but their moment of relief was shattered by the sight that greeted them. A swarm of alien vessels hung in orbit, weapons bristling from their angular hulls. The Ventaxian fleet was already in position, poised to strike at humanity's homeworld, and at the center of the formation loomed a ship that dwarfed the others, Zorval's flagship. "We need a plan," Tyler said, his voice tight. "We can't take on that fleet head-on." Laros leaned forward, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "We don't have to. We just need to get aboard Zorval's ship, cut off the serpent's head, and the body will die." Tyler nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. "Jake, Maria, you're with us. We're going to send that bastard straight to hell." As the team hurried to prep the captured warship's stealth systems and arm themselves for the fight ahead, Tyler pulled Laros aside. "I never thought I'd be fighting alongside a Ventaxian," he said, "but I'm glad you're here." Laros clasped Tyler's forearm, his scales rough against human skin. "Your species has taught me much about courage and honor. Let us hope it is enough." With a flicker of energy, the warship's cloak engaged, and they slipped past the Ventaxian lines like a ghost. The flagship grew in their view screen, a looming behemoth bristling with firepower. They docked in the flagship's hangar, the cloak shimmering away as they emerged into the cavernous space. Alarms blared, and Ventaxian soldiers swarmed towards them, plasma rifles raised. "Jake, Maria, get to the power core," Tyler ordered, his own rifle snapping up. "Laros and I will handle the bridge." The team split, trading fire with the oncoming guards as they raced in opposite directions. Tyler and Laros cut a path through the enemy, their weapons flashing. Ventaxian bodies hit the deck, smouldering holes in their armor. The Ventaxian barked a laugh, popping up to drop another guard with a well-placed shot. "I like you more." They fought their way to the bridge, the ship shuddering around them as Jake and Maria's sabotage spread. Smoke began to fill the corridors, the acrid stench of burning circuitry and flesh. The bridge doors loomed before them, sealed tight. Tyler slapped a breaching charge onto the metal and they braced themselves. The explosion tore the doors open, and they stormed through, weapons leveled. Admiral Zorval stood at the center of the chaos, his dark eyes glittering with malice. "You're too late," he hissed. "Earth will fall and the Ventaxian Empire will rise from its ashes." "Not today," Tyler snarled. They charged forward, Zorval's guards falling before their onslaught. The Admiral drew his own weapon, a glowing energy blade, and met them with a roar. Tyler and Laros fought side by side, human and Ventaxian united against their common foe. Zorval was a master swordsman, his blade weaving a deadly web, but they pressed him back, refusing to yield. On the bridge's viewscreen, Earth burned. Ventaxian ships swarmed the planet, raining destruction on the cities below. Tyler's heart clenched at the sight, rage and desperation fueling his attacks. Suddenly the flagship lurched, the deck tilting beneath their feet. Warning klaxons blared, red lights pulsing. Jake and Maria had done it. The power core was failing. Zorval stumbled, his balance lost for a crucial moment. Tyler and Laros struck as one, their blades finding the gaps in the Admiral's armor. The Ventaxian fell, his lifeblood pooling on the deck. But even as they stood victorious over their foe, the viewscreen showed the battle raging on. The Ventaxian fleet, though thrown into disarray by the loss of their flagship, still pressed their attack. Tyler and Laros exchanged a look, their faces grim. They had won the battle, but the war for Earth still hung in the balance. With the flagship's power core sabotaged, the bridge plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered to life, casting an eerie red glow. Tyler and Laros surged forward, pressing their attack against Admiral Zorval. The Ventaxian leader snarled, his eyes glinting with malice. He slammed his fist onto a control panel, and a hidden door hissed open. "You may have crippled my ship, but you will never defeat me." A hulking figure emerged from the shadows, its form obscured by a shimmering energy field. As it stepped into the light, Tyler's blood ran cold. The creature stood over 8 feet tall, its body a twisted mass of cybernetic enhancements and rippling, genetically engineered muscle. The super soldier lunged forward with blinding speed, its massive fist slamming into Tyler's chest. The human flew backwards, crashing into a bulkhead. Laros roared, his blade flashing as he engaged the monstrosity. But the super soldier was too fast, too strong. It shrugged off Laros's attacks, its energy shielding absorbing the blows. With a swipe of its arm, it sent the Ventaxian warrior tumbling across the deck. Tyler struggled to his feet, his ribs screaming in protest. He raised his rifle, firing a barrage of plasma bolts at the super soldier. The creature barely flinched, the bolts dissipating harmlessly against its shields. Jake and Maria burst onto the bridge, their weapons blazing. They had narrowly escaped the chaos caused by the power core's destruction, fighting their way through the crumbling ship. "We've got your back," Jake yelled, taking up position beside his brother. Together, the 4 heroes poured fire into the super soldier, desperate to find a chink in its armor. But the creature advanced relentlessly, its own weapons spitting deadly energy. Maria cried out as a bolt seared her shoulder, the smell of charred flesh filling the air. Jake dragged her into cover, his face tight with worry. On Earth, Dr. Ethan Reed watched the battle unfold on his monitors. The device he had created was working, weakening the Ventaxian fleet's defenses. Earth's forces were launching a devastating counterattack, the tide of battle turning in their favor. But the super soldier on Zorval's flagship remained a terrifying threat. Ethan's hands clenched into fists, frustration and fear warring within him. If only there was some way to help Tyler and the others. In a moment of desperation, Laros's eyes widened with sudden realization. He remembered an ancient Ventaxian legend, whispered stories of a flaw in the super soldier program. "Tyler," he shouted over the din of battle, "aim for the base of its skull. There's a weakness in the genetic code." Tyler nodded, understanding dawning on his face. He and Laros maneuvered around the super soldier, trying to get a clear shot at the vulnerable spot. The creature spun to face them, its movements a blur of speed and power. Tyler ducked under a sweeping blow rolling to the side. Laros leaped forward, his blade slashing at the super soldier's neck. For a moment it seemed as if the attack had failed. The super soldier's energy shielding held, the blade skittering harmlessly across its surface. Tyler saw his chance. He lunged forward, jamming his rifle against the base of the super soldier's skull. He pulled the trigger, pouring every ounce of energy into the shot. The super soldier stiffened, its body convulsing as the plasma bolt tore through its weakened shielding and into its genetically engineered flesh. It toppled forward, crashing to the deck with a resounding boom. Zorval let out a howl of rage, his plan unraveling before his eyes. He reached for the self-destruct controls, intent on taking Tyler and the others with him in a final blaze of destruction. But Laros was faster. The Ventaxian warrior slammed into Zorval, knocking him away from the console. His fingers flew over the controls, overriding the self-destruct sequence with moments to spare. The flagship shuddered around them, explosions tearing through its hull. Alarms blared, warning of imminent structural collapse. They ran, fighting their way through the disintegrating ship. Debris rained down, the deck buckling beneath their feet. Flames licked at their heels, the heat searing their skin. With a final, desperate leap, they hurled themselves through a gaping hole in the hull, tumbling into the void of space. Their suits sealed around them, life support systems engaging. Behind them, Zorval's flagship exploded in a blinding flash of light, the once mighty vessel reduced to a cloud of shattered metal and drifting debris. But Tyler and his team were already gone, propelled away from the destruction by the force of the blast. They drifted in the silence of space, battered and bruised, but alive. Earth hung before them, a blue-green jewel against the blackness of the void. The Ventaxian fleet was in disarray, their ships falling one by one to the human counterattack. Tyler felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Laros floating beside him. The Ventaxian's eyes were filled with a mix of triumph and sorrow, the weight of all they had endured etched into his alien features. "It's over," Laros said, his voice crackling over the comm. "We've won." But even as he spoke the words, Tyler knew that their struggle was far from finished. The Ventaxian threat had been defeated, but the scars of the conflict would linger, the wounds of war slow to heal. Earth would need to rebuild, to come to terms with the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe, and the fragile alliance between human and Ventaxian, forged in the crucible of battle, would be tested in the days to come. For now, though, they could only drift in the silence of space, four battered warriors united by the bonds of friendship and the scars of war. Tyler, Laros, Jake and Maria huddled together in the cramped confines of the escape pod, their eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them, lit by the flickering flames of the dying Ventaxian fleet. Explosions bloomed like fiery flowers, each one marking the destruction of another enemy ship. A cheer went up from Jake and Maria, as the last Ventaxian vessel shattered into a million glittering shards. Tyler and Laros exchanged a wordless glance, their expressions a mix of relief and sorrow. They had won the day, but at a terrible cost. The escape pod shuddered as it entered Earth's atmosphere, the heat of re-entry enveloping the tiny craft. Tyler gripped the controls, guiding them through the turbulence. The clouds parted, revealing the war-torn landscape of their homeworld. Smoke rose from the ruins of once great cities, the scars of the Ventaxian invasion etched into the earth. But amidst the destruction there were also signs of life. Pockets of resistance, humans emerging from hiding to greet the return of their heroes. The pod touched down on the outskirts of a makeshift military base, the hatch hissing open. Tyler and his team stepped out into the harsh sunlight, blinking away the glare. Tyler and Laros were swept up in the celebration, their hands shaken, their backs clapped. But even as they were hailed as saviors, they couldn't shake the weight of what they had lost. The Zorgoth and Titan, the creatures who had fought alongside them, were gone. They had given their lives to protect their human allies, a sacrifice that would never be forgotten. In the days that followed, as the rebuilding began, Tyler and Laros found themselves at a crossroads. The Ventaxian government, eager to atone for the actions of the rogue faction, extended an offer of peace, a chance to start anew, to forge a lasting alliance between their worlds. But the wounds of war were still raw, the memories of the fallen still fresh. Trust would not come easily, not after all that had been done. Laros knew that he had to return to Ventax Prime, to root out any remaining traces of the rogue faction, and ensure that such a tragedy could never happen again. It was a heavy burden, but one he was determined to bear. Tyler, meanwhile, found himself haunted by the ghosts of those he had lost. The faces of the fallen, human and Ventaxian alike, visited him in his dreams. He knew that he could no longer walk the path of a soldier, not after all he had seen and done. And so, in a bittersweet moment, the two friends said their goodbyes. Laros boarded a Ventaxian transport, his eyes filled with a grim resolve. Tyler watched him go, a lump in his throat and a weight in his heart. In the months and years that followed, Tyler threw himself into a new mission. He worked tirelessly to preserve the memory of the Zorgoth and Titan, to ensure that their sacrifice would never be forgotten. He built monuments in their honor, told their stories to anyone who would listen. And though the road ahead was long and uncertain, he knew that he would never stop fighting for the fragile peace they had won, for the chance to build a better future, one where the bonds forged in the heat of battle could flourish and grow. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.